Certainly, we're going to weigh in the situation together with Phillip Streible, a senior analyst, Blue Line Futures. Good morning, Phil. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'd like to hear your take on the data and how much of an impact can we imagine in terms of crude oil price fluctuations.
So it's really interesting because crude oil prices are actually up about 1% this morning, and it largely, ignored that news. I think the market was really focused on the China data, and China's continuing to improve. They dropped that forecast by about 300,000 barrels, and that's understandable. You've got a rise in COVID cases. You also have globally, you've got weaker economic data. You do have a lot of shelter in place. There's about 14 states. If you travel to in the United States, you'd have to maintain a 2-week quarantine. So that's going to curb that driving demand. But we do have a hurricane also that's coming through, Hurricane Sally. So that might impact some of the supply that's out there. Also, you see a pickup in gasoline demand when it comes from the generator use. So I think crude oil prices, they broke down to a level. They're kind of holding support. The weaker dollar is also helping support it as well.
If I have a look at the futures, I'm talking about U.S. stock futures, I do see certainly an indication for a higher opening. Do you believe that we are done with the downward trend? Are we at the very beginning of a bull market?
Yeah, we had a really healthy correction, that 10% decline in the S&P 500 and then the NASDAQ. It was a bit of a washout. What's really interesting is that there was news that a vaccine was going to make its way, the Russian vaccine. That marked a top in the market. And then when they said that the vaccine was on hold because they didn't like the way the trials were going, that marked the bottom. And what I think is going on is that you have these pandemic-proof NASDAQ technology stocks. You've got like your Netflix, your Peloton, things like that. When people hear the word vaccine, they sell those products, and then what they do is they start to buy values. So you see NASDAQ go down, you see the Dow Jones and the Russell go up on that news. I think it's a false play. I don't endorse that type of play, but that's what we're seeing. What's happening is this rotation between assets.
Right. Let me just get back very quickly to the crude oil. We've heard several analysts predicting at least 10% decline of the crude oil price once again. Do you agree with that kind of predictions, or you think the worst is gone?
So I think that oil, I was a person that, it stopped at 40 and had a false breakout 1 or 2 times of the upside. If it can't go up, it's probably going to come back down. And like I said, you don't see that big demand out there. We don't see a resurgence in demand. Airlines, cruise ships, things like that, freight, trucking. It's not a big demand picture. So the fact that any kind of weakness economically, and then also, Saudi Arabia cutting those prices, trying to maintain market share to China, which has filled up many of their supplies. So I think crude oil prices had the correction down. I think 35 to 40 is a good range for crude oil right now.
In terms of other commodities, what are you looking at? Certainly, the gold and the silver prices, the silver surge are very, very interesting. The fluctuations over there. What are you looking at?
So, gold is obviously a currency, so it is breaking out back to the upside. It's attempting to. If you look at the chart technically, you could pull up a real nice chart where the market had its peak and it's been coming down and it's forming this triangular wedge pattern. We're coming to the end of it. I think we'll break out to the upside. We've got a 2-day Fed meeting. They're going to reaffirm quantitative easing. They're also going to talk about having an average inflation rate of over 2% before they do any kind of action. I think they want that inflation. So I think the path of least resistance for gold's to the upside. Silver will track it because of the fact that it's a blended asset as a commodity and also a currency. So any kind of snapback industrial production, you're seeing silver prices rise.
So how important is the Fed meeting for the commodities, in your opinion?
Well, I think that they're the leader on any kind of stimulus. They've taken the most aggressive measures out of any central bank out there. I was slightly disappointed in the ECB's meeting. They didn't provide that additional stimulus. I thought we would have saw a more dovish play out of the ECB. So that held the euro currency firm. The dollar index should continue to weaken now. That's going to boost most commodity asset classes in US dollar terms. So like any of the grains, the livestock, that's why the energy markets are holding those. They should be a lot lower, but they're going to hold these levels. And then you're seeing all the base metals and precious metals all hold pretty firm.
Phil, I was wondering, I just wanted to hear your view. We've heard from BP, the British Petroleum, which actually said that the end of the petroleum is nearing, which is certainly quite a statement because it's a major company. We would rather hear that kind of stuff from ambientalists rather than BP. So I was wondering, do you agree with that statement?
Well, I mean, BP, they're a fairly powerful company. Their statements, are quite relevant. I think they're maybe showing their hand a little bit. You got to look at how these companies are set up and the debt loads that they take on, the hedging structures that they put in place. So, I haven't been that big of a fan of the energy companies lately. I think that you can get all these, at lower levels at the moment.
All right, thank you very much. Phillip Streible, Senior Analyst, Blue Line Futures. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for your analysis.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great week.